Hello. Hi. So I'm going to speak about something extremely boring, immortality. Now, when you think about immortality, why is that important? Well, outside the fact of the matter that most of us are starting to get a little bit concerned whether we're actually going to see the true value capture of blockchains in our lifetime. I think the previous panel was speaking about that. The other part is, what can actually happen if we build technology who has the ability to harness the power of humanity on this earth towards immortality? So really thinking about not so much about, you cannot do that and you shouldn't do that and so on, but you can't do evil. So there's a couple of examples I wanted to mention today, and one of them is very near and dear to my heart, and that is that sometimes awesome tech does not win. In this case, this is one of the largest shipping companies, and IBM. They went together and they created an amazing blockchain-powered shipping solution. It was fantastic. It really worked amazingly. The technology was on spot. What happened was something which happens among humans, and that is called asymmetry partnership or relationships. So when somebody has more power than others, they also have the likelihood or the chance to change the equation. So what happened here was some of the best technology I've seen for a long, long time was deployed about multiple containers and ships. It was track and trace. It was really, really good. But nobody of the competitors of Maersk Mc-Kinney Møller wanted to join this because this was hosted by Maersk. So Maersk didn't do anything wrong. I think they did really well. But it shows that some of these permission blockchains, there is an asymmetry which we need to pay attention to if we really want true immortality. What we also saw when I'm going around speaking to some of my colleagues and some of the regulators is that the MAS, they launched a huge project called Project Guardian. If you're not familiar with it, I really urge you to go in and check that out. What Project Guardian for the first time was speaking about publicly is that we have a nation state here who is saying, oh, hold on a second. We've been testing public permission blockchains and private permission blockchains for a while, and it doesn't seem to do what we want with financial market infrastructure. So for the first time, I saw something here thinking about public blockchains to build open and interoperable networks. And isn't that really what we want? Specifically sitting here in Dubai, in the melting pot between Africa, Asia, and Europe, redefining a new economy, redefining new possibilities. This interoperability is really where we want to go. And now even the regulators are opening up and saying, yeah, this is what we want to do. And I think we have a very good regulator here in Dubai as well, and a good government who's also focusing on some of those things. But to bring that into perspective, I like to use the analogy of what is a public permissionless blockchain. Because some of us, we speak about it, we think about it, we build on it, but we still don't understand what truly is important. So I'm trying to put it a little bit down on a lower level to try and put some clarity about what that would mean. So the way I look at it is that if you think about a public permissionless blockchain being a city, there is some functionality and success factors, just like the factors that make a city great. Think about Dubai, where we are today. How come you could build such a successful city in the desert? What are the factors, the features, what is needed to ensure that this is going to stand for generations to come? Now, just like cities need physical infrastructure, blockchains rely on a global network of nodes that validate and record transactions. Why is global important? Well, look around you, right? We have large economies who's failing, we have wars popping up and so on. So I think it's no longer sufficient that we trust one geographical center. Operational resilience is important. So global is of the utmost importance. Just like cities need economic opportunities, blockchains need incentive structures. If you do not understand the incentive structure of the blockchain of your choice, do not go there, okay? It's quite simple. Would you ever move to a city where you couldn't get a job? Would you ever take family to a city if there was no economic opportunities? Well, probably not. I think this is what Dubai has done so fantastically. They created opportunities across all cultures, all nationalities. Now, the thing about blockchains are they're not completely economically sustainable yet, well, outside Bitcoin. And even Bitcoin, you can argue a bit. So what we truly need is we need much more builders. We need people to capture the value. As we heard on the panel before, there are still some questions about Web3 and gaming and so on. But when you understand the incentives of the city, right, the economic opportunities of the city, and you port that into a blockchain, you start seeing that there is some centralized funding initiatives around these blockchains, and when they dry up, like Cardano, it has to be economic self-sustainable. Or if there are another blockchain where they can just print money as they choose, the question is inflation, right? So you need to really pay attention to these economic opportunities. Now, just like cities need housing, blockchains need storage solutions. And I'm sorry to say to all of you, this is complicated, huh? What we're doing today, which is completely amazing, is we have the ability to take not just static data and put it into a transaction. We can take various sensors, whether that is, air quality, forest fire detection, and so on, and we can update the blockchain automatically based on Internet of Things. This suddenly makes this much bigger than a financial market infrastructure or a gaming infrastructure, even though both of them are near and dear to my heart. It basically talks about how do we take blockchain outside the engine room of everything digital. How do we bridge it? How do we marry that with the success of the tooling you find in a city? And when you do that, you suddenly start thinking about, well, hold on a second. That means that the whole world will be operating on a blockchain. Now, if that truly is distributed and decentralized across nodes, what about governance? What if we don't get it right and we can't change it? What about our constitution? How many of you want to live in a city where you have no influence, either economically or as a vote? How many of you want to live in a city where suddenly your job is taken away and you have to move? So it basically touches something which we can think about as critical infrastructure. It's about the voice and what does it mean to have a voice. But it also is about crowd thinking. It's about innovation. It's about how do we actually come together and enable human innovation. Now, that brings into mind, how many of you have been to a library recently? Yes, a few of you. I'd like to give a shout out to the people who've been to a library. What's happening right now is that it costs absolutely zero to post false information on the internet. And it costs you an abundance of resources to take away false information. What's interesting is that governance and democracy and participatory governance only works if people understand what they're doing, if they're willing to actually dig deeper. Now, AI is going to scale blockchain, but if AI is open AI and large language models, that's not built on computable facts, right? That's built on the information on the internet, where misinformation is for free. Now, what's happening on a library is it costs money. If you write a book and you want it on a library, that costs money. We have a model that's called blockchain. That's the same. Huh? So we actually have a situation now that we have censorship in libraries. It costs money to go in there. You have to follow a standard. It's not for free anymore, which actually means that somebody took the time to figure out whether that book should be in that library. So I truly hope that you will think about that the next time you go to a library, because libraries are much like blockchains. Now, blockchains rely on cryptographic techniques. I don't need to speak a lot about that, but security is of the essence, right? And when we think about that, not only security, but also disaster recovery. If you have a true decentralized blockchain, in my case, 3,200 network operators, independently, most of them anonymous, we have an uptime of over 2,000 days. I dare you. Can you find a centralized technology who has no downtime in 2,000 days? No? Come on. Yeah, well, that's not the case, right? I built banks for a living. We were happy if we had 90% uptime in a week, huh? And that's critical infrastructure, huh? We have a blockchain which we've changed. We added smart contracting capabilities and so forth while it was running, and 2,000 days is the uptime. You can truly trust blockchains, not just Cardano, but you can truly trust them today. Now, but we have to do our homework. So what we're building is networking, health overuse. We are monitoring the global state of the network. We are sharing that and so on. Because what we noticed is that sometimes you're so happy about all the cool stuff, the Google Maps, the gaming, and all those things you use every single day. But sometimes there is one repo, one little component where the whole thing is built on, who happens to be centralized, and it doesn't work anymore. And then the whole thing goes down. That's what happened in 2003. For those of you who are sort of nerdy about it, it was an Apache repo, and the guy, he's been maintaining that for free forever, and suddenly one day he's like, I can't be bothered anymore. And then suddenly there was a security flaw on the global internet, and nearly the whole internet went down. And we have the same thing with blockchains, outside Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin's code is not changing. That's why it's so powerful. But if we want to have a true product to market fit, and I think that's what really the panel before nailed, the product to market fit, and the product to market fit is coming as the new generation is coming as well. But also as technology matures, what we need to understand is that operational resilience and the monitoring of that becomes more and more critical as we have thousands of companies and critical infrastructure deploying on decentralized public permissionless blockchains who's going to last forever. Now, decentralization is a trade-off. And I'm sorry some people would chase me out of the room now and say, oh, Fred, it's all about decentralization. No, decentralization is a trade-off. And to a certain extent, Cardano is over-decentralized. We actually use more energy expenditure, according to the European Union, in comparison to the optimal state. Now, what we don't want to do is we don't want to go in and say, you can be a stake pool operator and you cannot. We think everybody should have access to this technology and also to the resources and the opportunities that gives, right? But there is something to be said about that people misunderstand decentralization. So I'll urge you all, if you have the time and you know a little bit of Python, you can go in on Edinburgh. They've done an app who's basically looking at Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and others, and you can basically look at decentralization across various aspects because it's not as easy as you might think. So there is different layers to decentralization, which I will not get into today. The slides hopefully will be public, but go in there and have a look at it because it has multiple components and it is a trade-off. Now, Cardano today, which I'm very proud of, and it's not just Cardano, but other blockchains is going in this direction. What we see today is that people are willing to pass with their economic resources to use the blockchain for more than just sending money, more than just hodling. And what we see today is, as you can see up here, is that simple transactions is the red. So 38% of the transaction on Cardano at the moment is just I'm sending ADA, I'm receiving ADA, I'm sending ADA to the room is sending ADA to me. But that means that 60% of all transactions on Cardano is using advanced utilities. They're using Cardano as an ERP system. They're using smart contracts. They're using identity, right? So we are already in a stage where it's sneaking up on us that blockchains are enterprise ready. And I think this is just simply amazing. Lately, we also published a new tool, a Cardano Explorer, for regulators, for policymakers, for auditors, because it dawned upon us, how dare we as an industry go to a regulator and say, if you cannot read the code, we don't want you. You can't do that. So what we did is we built, together with several regulators around the world, a blockchain explorer, which we're going to make open source so any other layer one can take that. And we made it for the eyes of a regulator. What does staking really mean? What does slashing mean? Is there slashing? What about a lock-in period? Who decides what, right? Is there magical keys in circumvention? You know, those questions is what the regulator is looking at together with operational resilience. So we need more tooling. We need more of those things who makes it transparent for the people who take those decisions. And that comes together with the situation that we are planning for the future. And the future is blockchain enabled. The future is in a way where we can verify what's happening. Everything we do, and which is near and dear to our hearts, we should be able to verify that with more than one entity. Because if it's with only one entity, well, look around you. I mean, the world is changing faster than we like, huh? We see new hotspots popping up. We see Silk Road being enabled in South Caucasus again. We see global world power suddenly losing grip. We see BRIC countries. You know, the whole thing is changing. And in the middle of that, we see a set of small countries stepping up, standing for peace, standing for technology and innovation. And I like to think that the Emirates and Dubai is one of those. I think Switzerland is another. Singapore is another. You know, Georgia, where I was last week, is another. There are some of those coming, and some of them are enabled by blockchain, and you are a part of that. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for being here, and remember, whatever we do, public blockchains and permissioned blockchains has the power of uniting society and generating value to all business models, not just the digital ones. If anybody wants, we can take a few questions. Other than that, this is how you get started. No questions? I heard that there was some tricky questions somewhere out there. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Paul Kaunda. I'm a tech lawyer from Tanzania. It's my first time to be here. This concern I tried to raise yesterday, but I don't think I get a satisfactory answer. Now I think it's opportune to raise it before you. There are almost 3 types of DLTs, decentralized radio technologies. You're only talking about blockchain. I want to know your take on the other 2, the DAGs, directed assisted graph and the hierarchy graphs. Thank you.
I think it depends on your use case. I mean, you have different things to do nearly the same thing. The way I look at it right now is that time will tell depending on your use case. When you look at multi-party computation and some of those things, there is some like to a blockchain, but most of those are very centralized. So when you look across the 7 layers I presented before in terms of decentralization, you would see that there is a set of controls in there, and these controls a lot of people like. They like that they can restart the network. They like that they can censor the network. They like that they have the power to say you are in and you are out. I think true blockchain is public permissioned, and I think they are designed as a blockchain, and you then have layer 2 mechanisms around that to scale for data consumption. All right, that was a very quiet room, huh? I think we can take one more question and then, keep building.
Hi, amazing presentation. Like you guys are working very smartly on the proof of stake on the Cardano side. This question is regarding the regulatory aspects on the mass adoption. What do you think on the regulatory framework on the use of these kind of technologies for internal consumptions?
So I was just together with the European Securities and Market Authorities on Friday, and I was together with another regulator 2 weeks ago. And my view is extremely clear at this stage. The first point is we cannot be technology agnostic. A lot of us has been saying we need new regulation, we need to have a way to basically safeguard these new technologies. That's not happening with the speed we want, and therefore we cannot just turn away and say we do not accept current regulation. That's not how the world works. So first of all, technology specific is the way forward. Second, principle-based regulation. We have to look at the actual use cases and what do they really do. And on a infrastructure, as Cardano or as any other really good blockchain, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there is a use case and there is an infrastructure component. Sometimes the use case on one blockchain will be fully allowed under the current regulation, and sometimes it won't. So you cannot isolate look at one use case without actually looking at the infrastructure, because the infrastructure works significantly different. Third, we are doing ourselves a misfavor when we use words who are not the same. Everybody speaks about NFTs, but I can tell you 15 different ways of actually defining an NFT, and if you look into the tech stack, you would see that one of the NFTs is a centralized issuance who has nothing to do with digital signatures, has nothing to do with ownership change, is basically a hash, right? The other one has everything on chain, and there's a complete different set of regulation for that. And last but not least, and maybe even more importantly, because you asked about proof of stake is not proof of stake. So for instance, Cardano has no slashing, has no lock-in period, has no ownership change. So why should it be in the same boat as a blockchain who has that if you look at capital market regulation in Europe or Dubai? It shouldn't, because you should be looking at the incentives. So we're doing ourselves a disfavor. And I always say to everybody, including my own team, don't call it something because somebody else called it. You know, if this is digital art, call it digital art. If this is sport, call it something with sport. And I think, you know, in general, proof of stake has been misused in such a way right now that we have to go away from it or be much more specific on talking about what we actually mean when we say proof of stake. Because mathematically and cryptographically, we mean complete different things. There's a difference between positive reinforcement, Cardano, and negative reinforcement in combination with positive reinforcement like Ethereum. Now, there's a very strong use case for Ethereum, and there's a very strong use case for Cardano. But if you look at it from a regulatory perspective, well, ownership change is ownership change. I think that's it. I'm being thrown off the stage now. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here.